ALll gauge or ALll scale model railways are the most popular standard gauge model railway tracks in the United Kingdom. This track gauge is one of several 4 mm scale standards used, but it is the only one to be served by the major manufacturers. Despite this, the ALll track gauge of 16.5 mm is inaccurate for 4 mm scale, and other gauges of the same scale have arisen to better serve the desires of some modelers for greater scale accuracy. Origin: ALll scale model railways were launched by Byng in 1921 as the Table Railway, running on 16.5 mm track and scaled at 4 mm to the foot. In 1922, the first models of British prototypes appeared. Initially all locomotives were powered by clockwork, but the first electric power appeared in autumn 1923. ALll describes models with a scale of 4 mm equals 1 foot running on HO scale 187 track. This combination came about as early clockwork mechanisms and electric motors were difficult to fit within HO scale models of British prototypes which are smaller than equivalent European and US locomotives. A quick and cheap solution was to enlarge the scale of the model to 4 mm to the foot but keep the 3.5 mm to the foot gauge track. This also allowed more space to model the external valve gear. The resulting HO track gauge of 16.5 mm represents 4 feet 1.5 inches at 4 mm to the foot scale. This is 7 inches under scale or is approximately 2.33 mm too narrow. In 1932 the Byng company collapsed, but the Table Railway continued to be manufactured by the new Trix company. Trix decided to use the new HO standard, being approximately half of European zero gauge. In 1938, the Meccano company launched a new range of ALll models under the trade name of Hornby ALll. ALll gauge has remained the UK's most popular scale gauge ever since. In the United States, ALll Corporation introduced a range of ALll models in 1938. Soon other companies followed but it did not prove popular and remained on the market only until 1942. ALll gauge was quickly eclipsed by HO scale. The ALll range of ALll used 19 mm per A3/4 track gauge, a scale 57, a track width that was more to scale. There is a small following of American ALll scale gauge today. Today, ALll remains the most popular scale for railway modelling in the Great Britain due to a ready availability of ready-to-run stock and starter sets. Ready-to-run in the UK is dominated by Hornby Railways and Bachmann Branch Line. Other sources of ready-to-run rolling stock or locomotives include ALll, Helgen, Pecco, By-Trains and previously Lima. Other scales, with the possible exception of N gauge, lack the variety and affordability of UK ready-to-run products. The quality of ALll models has improved over time. Scaling and accuracy: 16.5 mm gauge at 4 mm, 1 foot means that the scale gauge represents 4 feet 1 2 in, 7 inches narrower than the prototype 4 feet 8 1 2 in. This difference is particularly noticeable when looking along the track. Curves are often sharper than the prototype, and often not transitioned, particularly when using set-track systems. Overhang from long vehicles means that track centers are overscaled to prevent collisions on curves between stock on adjacent lines, at up to 65 mm. As the market for proprietary track is mostly for HO scale, sleeper size and spacing are designed for HO and are therefore underscale. Overscale wheel width and deep wheel flanges are used on typical models, and these require overscale rail profile and much larger clearances on pointwork than is prototypical. Pointwork is often compressed in length to save space. Though they run on the same track, ALll gauge and HO gauge models of the same prototype do not sit well together since the ALll models are larger than the HO equivalent. ALll is also used to represent the 5 feet 3 in Irish gauge, where it is a scale 13 1 2 inches too narrow. These differences have led to the development of the Fierner scale standards of M gauge and P4 standards. Nevertheless, it is possible to model using ALll standards that fall just short of Fierner scale. 4 mm Fierner scale standards: many experienced modelers find the ALll standard produces a narrow gauge appearance when the model is viewed from head-on. Greater accuracy is possible using either M gauge or the closer to exact scale P4 track. Whilst flex track is available for both M and P4 gauges, ready-to-run point and crossing work is not available, so this track work must be constructed by the modeler. Kits for doing this are also available from the aforementioned sources amongst others. Several of these kits are also available for the ALll modeler who aims for more realistic track, since most RTA track is actually scaled to HO and does not represent any British prototype and the sleeper spacing is too close together for scale. M gauge has slightly overscale flanges and flangeways on point and crossing work. P4 is closer to scale but the smaller flanges and flangeways on P and C work expose poor track construction. See also Other model railway scales Model railway scales, rail transport modelling scales. Related scales 009 a used for modelling 2 feet narrow gauge railways and 4 mm scale, UN 3 a used for modelling 3 feet narrow gauge railways and 4 mm scale, HO a 3.5 mm scale using the same 16.5 mm gauge track as 00. M a 4 mm scale using 18.2 mm track. P4 a set of standards using 18.83 mm gauge track. OOSF a uses 16.2 mm track with ordinary OOWL sets. Allows the tighter track work tolerances of M without the need to re-gauge wheels. Manufacturers Kitemaster a manufactured plastic model kits of railway engines, rolling stock, and buildings. Airfix a bought the Kitemaster range and sold it under the Airfix brand until the original Airfix company collapsed in 1981. Some of the tooling was then destroyed, but ALll bought the remainder. Most Airfix military vehicles are also to 1/76 scale. Bachmann branch line a one of the largest manufacturers of ready-to-run ALll a produce kits and ready-to-run wagons. Helgen a produce a small number of locomotives and wagons. Hornby Railways a one of the largest manufacturers of ready-to-run ALll. Lima a produced budget ALll ready-to-run, bought by Hornby. Pecco a produce a wide range of track. Willett scale models, produce handmade, brass, carriages and wagons. External links, 00 Gauge Association, History of 00 Gauge.